Hello. Hi, Colette. I'm here with Colette Sadler, an artist from Glasgow, living in Berlin. She's a dancer and choreographer, and has the work that we invited to be in the festival in 2020, in the program of the festival this year, in the 27th edition of the Porto Alegre em Cena. However, with the coronavirus crisis, we are now just talking about it and hopefully showing some of her work during the festival this year, virtually. And hopefully the next year, the next edition of the festival, will be able to invite her and the work that I saw in the Edinburgh Festival, in the showcase, called Learning from the Future. And Colette has deep research in future bodies, cyborgs, and exploring the choreography and the body work to talk and discuss all this matters and research. And has a lot to do what I've been also looking for to discuss during the festival with the program that we are making here. And when I saw the show, I was very happy to find in her work many also questions and the aesthetic that is very precise and very beautiful. And there's a lot to do with also many things that I've been looking for in terms of the future body and the future of humanity, and what will all be from us in, I don't know, a couple of years. So I'm very happy to be here with you, Colette. Thank you for talking to me and to us, with the audience of the festival. So welcome, yes. And well, I actually would like just to start to, if you could speak a little bit about your work and how did you came up with Learning from the Future?
Okay, so Learning from the Future is a piece that I started in 2016. I've been making choreographies since about 2006-07, and I've been very interested in my work of connecting physical dramaturgies to kind of conceptual ideas. And for many years I was looking at ideas of extending the body, of alien, of monstrosity, of otherness, and finding ways in which to represent and choreograph these bodies. And then around 2016-17, I initiated a new phase of research that was primarily looking at this kind of future of the body, or future bodies. And for me, engaging with this future or sci-fi body was a way of reinventing or reimagining what the body could or might be or might become. And so in this work, Learning from the Future, I invented a prototype body, and this prototype body has the name Body A. Body A has, so there's only one Body A, there's only one of this body, so it's not a social body, it has no community. And the question is, what is the purpose of this body? And in the piece, we find this body in a landscape which is out of real time and space, so in a kind of dreamland, well, maybe not dream landscape, but in some kind of abstract landscape. And she's dressed in a kind of classical, kind of cyborg, kind of looking jumpsuit, kind of more like a modernist idea of a future body. And she is, the body in this piece is kind of reframed as some sort of technology or some sort of testing ground for the relationships between the human and the non-human. In this case, the relationship between the body and data, the body and information. And there's a kind of poetry around this idea in this piece, in that somehow she is this kind of singular body processing this information in this landscape, and she finally kind of kind of disappears or implodes because the amount of information that she's processing, like the movement is constantly speeding up and slowing down and rewinding. So we use this kind of technology of video camera, to kind of create this artificiality, because I'm very interested in artificiality and as a kind of a mode of reinventing the world in art, or kind of creating new narratives around what could be. So that's, and Body A actually is also the name of a video work that I made together with a visual artist, Miko Gestel, and also appears now in a number of sound journeys, which is really about digging into this idea of this prototype body. And, is she some kind of Ubermensch? Is she some kind of, body that somehow is an upgraded version of the human? Is she some kind of spiritual warrior? What is this body? So she carries with her a lot of philosophical concepts, and that interests me insofar as it connects dance to these other wider thematics that exist in ecology and digital future and so on and so forth.
And first you created the Body A, which was this exhibition that you worked with a visual artist, and then you came up with the choreography. Did you already started working with the dancer for Body A, or it was just the images?
Yeah, actually, it was the other way around. I started with the dancer. I started with Body A, and it's quite interesting because I made a work, or my solo work deals with prosthetics. So I have a piece where I have like a third arm. So it's kind of already some sort of a future body or some sort of other body. And I was working with a dramaturg, and he said, maybe there's something about this futurism, because, old futurism is also about ideas of like acceleration and improvement and so on. So actually, just to go back to your question, I started with the dancer, with Leah Mariovich, who's a British-Australian dancer based in London. And she's a very virtuosic performer. So in a way, it was very interesting to work with her, because she could really somehow articulate and bring to life the kind of the extremes of what this body might be able to do. We often talked about building the anthropology of Body A, like how does she move her head? How does she move her eyes? Like, you had to repurpose what the body is for. The hands are for like sensing kind of radars or picking up information, or so there was this whole kind of journey through movement about repurposing a human body and understanding its kind of non-human aspect. And then with the video artist, we wanted to have this kind of non-human performer, some sort of fictional algorithm that's there, who inhabits the space with Body A. And they're both kind of Body A's. Maybe the video artwork is like a future Body A, when the human body is no longer necessary. It's just some kind of artificial intelligence. So the video work came after, so the dance came first. But we always imagined the piece with this non-human figure. And actually, the video work, it started off as some kind of a tombstone, as some sort of gravestone. So that's why it has a shape a bit like the Stanley Kubrick monolith. So the piece starts out with saying a body. So a human body kind of dies and is reborn as kind of Body A. And then the monolith moves from a kind of a gravestone to this kind of futuristic kind of algorithmic intelligence, or some kind of future AI.
And she also in the live work, the dancer also sort of interacts with a light that's projected in a board, and also with the sound. It seems very organic, that the dance and the sound and those colors projected in the sport. Is it all live filmed, or how did you came up with that?
Well, it's interesting because actually I also worked with the Finnish lighting designer Samuli Lane on the lighting, and it was the first time I used such extreme lighting in a work. But it was about building this landscape and this kind of sci-fi landscape. So it was very important that the lighting, the sound, and the images could all kind of create this other space, this like non-human environment or some kind of landscape. So there was, on purpose, this kind of very close kind of collaborative space between all the elements. But the video and the lights for every show are it's always the same material, but the timing is often done live. So that makes it also interesting because it feels like it's not that, you know, the artists actually travel with the show and play the video and the light live. Exactly. So there's this kind of live element to the piece, and I think that's very special because you can feel it, that like it's very. Yeah, and that kind of, it's interesting because once we did the show with kind of not the team, and you really felt it was very different. So there is definitely an aspect of the live, but it's not improvised. Like I never improvise anything. My work is always very tightly choreographed. Like the movement of the eyelashes is it's always very clear.
No, we can definitely see that it's all very choreographed or directed or very, everything in its place. However, as I said, and as you were saying, it really feels like everything is really happening in that moment. So it is all live, not just the performer herself, but everything, like the whole set, sound, lighting, and well, yes, everything is. It's like there's a dialogue in the real time with all these elements, the scenic element, which was made everything very more special. And yes, this was very nice. And the costume also, it brings in the same moment that we see it, it's really like we sort of recognize the cyborg that we have in our minds.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we made the costume, we were thinking of a skin, actually. So it was some sort of idea of a second skin, but in the end, it looks a bit like sort of 1920s sort of futurism. It's not this futurism from like sci-fi films of current times. And I made a second work called Temporary Store, which is a kind of extension of Learning from the Future. And in this work, they're wearing kind of very neutral, like grey tank tops, and then they have these kind of transparent jumpsuits. So it's much more the kind of up-to-date sci-fi, you know. But it's true, Body A, she's this cyborgian figure, and she's wearing it, but it's the kind of historical cyborg. But it still feels. It's difficult to place Learning from the Future into time, I would say. It feels quite timeless, even if, like you say, this suit is really like saying cyborg and from a particular moment in history.
Yeah, no, that's sure, but I mean, the subject of discussing cyborgs and this future body and this mixture of human and machine, this is a very present discussion that we can see it in many places, in the works of many artists also. So I wanted to know also how and why did you came up started to researching this subject also? Why were you coming up looking for this the body? What were your influences in terms of discussions and researches generally? I remember when we were first discussing about your work and the festival in the Porto Alegre em Cena. You mentioned Donna Haraway. She was a researcher, and then I was already in touch with her because I know her work and her books, and she has the Cyborg Manifest, which is a very nice work. And she's also going to collaborate with the festival and the magazine. So when you told me that, I think it has all, well, we're all connected. So I wanted you to tell us what's your relationship with Donna and all this other researchers and thinkers about this subject.
Yeah, I think when I started looking at this subject matter, just to say that in Present Futures 2019, which is a festival that I curate, or have curated numbers of editions in Glasgow and Berlin, we'd had a panel discussion where we were directly looking at the writings of Donna Haraway, more in relation to kind of queer kin, and looking at this business of like the human and the non-human entanglements, looking at ecology, looking at the digital. I guess it's a lot about connecting. She doesn't talk about the Anthropocene, but it's also sort of, she has another name for it. But it wasn't, let's say with looking at learning from the future, it wasn't like a direct influence on me. But later on, I kind of discovered her work, and I read the Cyborg Manifesto, and clearly it also has a lot of resonances with looking at learning from the future and this whole notion of like women's bodies and feminism, and it's this kind of interfacing machine and body. But I think at the time of making learning from the future, I'm trying to think back to about what I was reading at that time, because now it was 2016. I was like, I've actually got the book on my bookshelf, so this is quite interesting. I was starting to read and look at a book which is called How We Became Post-Human, which is actually a book which is already, it's a kind of a classic of How We Became Post-Human. So it was a kind of a classic book. It's already kind of quite, I think it's already quite dated now, but and it's looking at kind of the advantages and disadvantages of like human versus kind of machine or kind of cybernetic bodies. So kind of saying that, what a kind of a machine body, well, also the business of embodiment actually, which is for me a very interesting subject, because in a way dance is so much to do with embodiment. And one of the biggest kind of areas of interest for robotics research, which I've also been doing at the beginning of this year in London with King's College, is actually, how do we translate, or how do we give experiences of embodiment and empathic response and proprioception to algorithms or robotic bodies who have no idea of what it is to kind of have or be a body. And also this idea of presence, like a body has presence, it has aura, it has energy, whereas a non-human has the advantages of randomness and algorithms. So looking, rather at saying, human is always better, it's looking at how can we actually live together. And I think maybe this is the wider question also that you find in Haraway, is like, how do we now live in this situation of being a human body, a virtual body, a digital body? How do we live with algorithms who make choices for us? How do we work with those new technologies to make, to improve our lives, to kind of somehow move us forward, rather than, look at them as a threat, and technology is going to destroy the human. So for me, this whole area of research is, and it's not even research, I think it's actually about looking at where we are in the world right now, and particularly within, the current pandemic and the uncertain future our lives post, if there is a post COVID-19. So yes, I think Haraway's work is, or the kind of the elements that I've taken out of Haraway's work has also been looking more at kind of the environment of late. And I think particularly my work in relation to this virtual body or digital body is still from this perspective of embodiment and experience, and how our experience shifts in relation with and to technology. Like how we become other humans, how it changes us, and it clearly is changing us a lot. And notions of community and notions of family and notions of togetherness have been radically shifted within this pandemic time and space. Sorry, I kind of wandered off there, but I was like...
Exactly that. I mean, it's beautiful. I love to talk about it because I've been reading also a lot about it, and it's all really there. I mean, I think it's a very important subject because it really is sort of a result of our choices as humankind. You know, you were mentioning Anthropocene, and it's exactly that. And it's, for me, one of the things that I find very, very interesting is to learn from people that are really developing works and researching and studying a lot about this post-human, the way of living of this post-human, the way of thinking of this post-human. And it has a lot to do also with the way that our indigenous people and artists and leaders are actually mentioning the way we should live, like moving the human out from the center of the world, the nature, and stop exploring and killing the other species and the other communities and people that live differently from the way usually the white people, Europeans, came to explore the world and nature, and how we are doing all of this industrial revolutions, and how we're all really exploring and killing nature and other species, and therefore killing ourselves. So it's when I was listening to also to Oxford, there's a sector in the Oxford University where they are dedicated to study about transhuman and post-humans, and it's very, very interesting to see that this way of thinking of this post-human that will no longer remove from the human body the responsibility for everything, and that we are finding that we're better and more powerful than, I don't know, any other species.
Yeah, I think we're also, you know, if you think about it, I mean, this pandemic that we find ourselves in, it was a result of a kind of something occurred in nature that had never happened before. But also this pandemic has been positive for the environment. Exactly. So you feel as if, you know, we're at this idea that we're somehow always moving forward, it's always more, it's always bigger, it's always better, or, you know, this idea is really something that, I mean, I think there will be, you know, people who will, you know, things will just go on as, you know, in 50 years, what will the planet look like if we just carry on the way we carry on? But essentially what's happening right now is kind of nature's response to the lack of consciousness and the lack of responsibility that the choices that humans have been making. And as you say, you know, the kind of European colonial power has a lot to answer for in its kind of supremacist ideas that have, you know, kind of raped and pillaged, you know, civilizations, you know. So clearly this is a long historical process and it's not over yet, but we're definitely entering a new phase. And we don't quite know what that looks like. But yeah, I think, I mean, from the planetary perspective, I think if we don't start to take steps, you know, we will see more and more and greater events happening. You know, we thought the bushfires in Australia was already a kind of a high point of this year. That was at the beginning, you know, so it's an interesting times. And I think, you know, but when I was studying the robotics and looking at robotics, it was interesting how robotic bodies were patrolling parks in China, like kind of robotic dogs telling people to stay distance from one another. Robotic nurses have been active in diagnosing the pandemic, diagnosing COVID-19 in African countries. So there's really been also this kind of, the sort of technology has also come in a positive sense to kind of, in places where the human can go no longer, the non-human, the robotic body is, you know, doing tasks that humans, you know, that would be dangerous for humans. So this is, you know, this is, and I can imagine that this is going to carry on. I don't think we're not going to go back to how we were before. But hopefully there's going to be a new, there's the consciousness will somehow shift. And I think there is a shift in consciousness. And I think artists are also part of this whole movement, or they're reflecting it in their works, or we're thinking about it, I mean, in dance, you know, it's also, one tries to connect kind of abstract concepts to also, you know, where you find yourself in the world and how you experience the world. And for me, experience is something that also shifts a lot within this new space of, like, we're now talking on Zoom, you know, this live versus this digital space, this mediated space. So, or relationships to being in crowds, like lots of things are mediated now through the digital. And I think this will carry on beyond this year, or whenever we kind of find a vaccine or move forward out of this pandemic. So yeah, so I think maybe it's today I was thinking it's interesting how, you know, all the theatres are the one thing that haven't opened yet. You know, dance has been very hard hit by the pandemic, and I thought, yeah, the body is still is really is viral. The body is truly viral at this point in time. Yes,
exactly. It is. And but yes, I mean, this all of this that you're saying is actually, when I started wondering about our future as humanity, as nature, we're all part of this nature, and we depend on the water and on the air to breathe and everything, and we are all connected, even though humanity has not seemed to have realized that yet, that we depend on everything, that we're all connected to also to live. And this Anders Sandberg, that is this was seen a lecture of him is from the Oxford University, and he was mentioning exactly that. We are creating machines and ways to challenge our death, challenge the ending of the human body, and but it will come to a moment when the temperature itself from the world will say, okay, we're going to have to stop. There's no more life, even for machines. I mean, we won't be able to bear it. and that's the whole question mark for the way we are treating nature and therefore ourselves. But what was beautiful also when I was looking for all these things, last year we had a beautiful work that was called The Silence of the World. This two magnificent indigenous leaders, one from Minas Gerais in the center of the country, and the other one from a community in the north, close to Venezuela. And it's Ailton Krenak and Vico Penawa Yanomami. And it was a work that I was developing with Andrea Duarte. She is a white artist, but she's been dedicating her work for over 20 years now to the indigenous knowledge, and it's amazing. I've been learning so much, and it's so crazy that we explored and we like also shut their, we sort of erased their words during all this time of colonization and everything, but they have such an amazing way of living. It's they have like a system that works like perfectly, as they say. I mean, it's not that we are defending the land for ourselves. We're defending the land for everybody. We're like our work and what we do is to defend the land, to protect the land for everybody. It's not that we are going to have it for ourselves and explore it and use it only for ourselves. It's actually protecting it from the world, from evil or whatever. But and all these ways and their relationship with this people, these humans, and their relationship with the community and with all the elements in the nature, like the trees and the animals and the earth and the sky, and it's like their relationship with everything. It's so organic. It's so like they have really the knowledge that they depend on everything to live themselves, and it's so beautiful to see all that and see how everything works, and they really have like a real system in their communities that works perfectly, and they're all different in parts of the country, but they're there somehow, and they have been living for centuries and centuries. So really, I think when I went to discuss about all this, and I was amazed that the ideas of these transhumans and posthumans would sort of come back to also this way of thinking, that we're no longer, the humankind will no longer explore other species and try to live with it in like harmony, and not being like the central of the species and the central of the world. So sort of stopping this Anthropocene era. And this is all very, very curious that that somehow we are developing this artificial intelligence, and doing that we explore nature, and we're sort of moving forward in this technology, and somehow this technology someone will meet our ancestors and the people that was for a very long time already saying that they needed to protect the land for even for the human kind. So it's all very sort of connected also and very beautiful. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do with the festival, is to try and show, to open space and have the possibility to show to the audience and to the people, so we can think about change, sort of give them the Black people that have this ancestor and also this very great relationship between themselves and with nature, and their religion that is also connected to nature. And here in Brazil, we have 54% of the people, the Brazilian people, is Afro descendants. So, descendants. So, and the indigenous people, and try to, for the first time, show the people what they have to teach us, because what we have so far is not working. And so maybe try and change the perspective and give them the chance to speak, and then we can learn something from them also.
Yeah, I think it's about shifting power relations. You know, you see that like there's been voices that have been silenced and abused and violated, and their narratives have not been part of dominant narratives. And that's also shifting in this 2020, that like we're being asked to look at, we're being asked to look at white supremacy. We're being asked to look at how we are, what we understand of like historical narratives that have brought us to where we are now. And it's, as I said, it's lifting up our consciousness, and it's asking us to, well, one to reflect and be aware, but also to think, okay, so what can I do? And clearly Brazil is I'm not so familiar with politics of Brazil. I've never been there, possibly next year. But, you know, one reflects from your own perspective, whether you're Scottish or German or Brazilian, and, you know, you think about responsibility and how can you take responsibility for these bigger questions, and what does that mean? But definitely there needs to be some shift in power, and there needs to be other narratives and new voices need to be heard, but we also need to make space for them.
Exactly.
So we need to stop talking.
Exactly, and give them space. This is actually what we are trying to do also. But yeah, you were also mentioning something that is also part of this festival. It's a performing arts festival, usually, but I also like very much this interaction of all kinds of manifesting and expressing themselves, of the artists. And I was very, as I said in the beginning of our conversation, I was very happy to, when I wanted to discuss about all these matters, and I found in artists' work many things that were also related to that, to what I was looking for. So I really, besides all that, it's also very important also to open space for artists in general, and art events, to give artists the chance also to speak and to show their work, and how this also can sort of show some other perspective as well. And would like to know what do you think about it, and also as a choreographer and dancer, and how you create your own works, but you also curate this festival. So how do you see also this importance and the relationship, importance and power of that the artists have to sort of move forward the way we think and the way we see the world.
I mean, I think that, you know, art is a way of, well, for me, being an artist is also how it's a subject. My art is a kind of a, let's say, it's a channel for my subjective experience of being in the world. So it's very much connected to what I see around me, to the time in which I live, to my own life. And I think that art has to do with making meaning. I mean, not necessarily, but let's say it has this kind of potentially deeper philosophical value. And it's also a way in which we can reinvent the world anew, or we can bring forth the new. So I think this is something very important, a very important function of art. I mean, I think one of the reasons I chose to do particularly an interdisciplinary festival as opposed to just a dance festival was because, I mean, a lot of my career has operated within British dance, and although my work is more kind of conceptually orientated, which is not the kind of the norm, or for many years that wasn't the kind of dominant style, let's say, of British dance. So with my own festival, I wanted to also kind of create space for other voices within the dance and performance world that were not necessarily about, you know, visual artists making performance, or even, you know, choreographers making work for galleries, but rather to say, okay, what is this interdisciplinary space, and what is a conceptually motivated practice? So and I also felt from my experience of curating these events that we had a lot of artist talks like the one we're having now, and it gave audiences a chance to really kind of listen to artists talk about their work, or to get some kind of background to whatever they'd seen. And this seemed to be this was very interesting for audiences. So I also, the idea to bring in kind of theorists and researchers and so on is to kind of say, yeah, we are working transdisciplinary. So somebody studying film or making films may have similar concerns to somebody making a dance piece, but the form is very different, and the way of understanding time, like how does an archaeologist deal with time? How does a choreographer deal with time? How does a filmmaker deal with time? So it's possible to work across disciplines, and also to look at, I mean, that's maybe more my future kind of thought if I managed to do the festival this year, is relationships between science and art. So building on this robotics research, how do we connect, you know, the research in dance to the research of robotics? And perhaps, you know, we can mutually help one another to kind of move knowledge forward on these subjects. But for me, I think art can change the way people think. And it can also just be something beautiful. So it can also it can be quite a joyful thing. It can be joyful. It often is, that even if it's not about joy itself. So for me, I feel like even if you know, art is seen as somehow unnecessary in the time, in this current time, or there's some sort of, I read somewhere that in some kind of Google statistics, like the job of the artist was seen as kind of zero importance. Actually, I think, you know, at this time, art is a place where we can really reflect on meaning, and so for me, it's very important to continue making art and to continue creating events where we can bring different artists together with public and kind of reflect on all the subjects that we've kind of been talking about now.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, it's really what reflects the society in one point. So it's the chance that everybody has through sensible words and beauty also be connected to different ways of thinking. Visually, for me, it's also very important that we can also sometimes, and probably that's what I love in performing arts generally, in visual arts also, well, all kinds of arts, but in theater and well, dance, performing arts generally, it's for me is the impact of the visual of the work, that sometimes it also does like sort of a shift in my brain, and when it shows me something that I've never seen before, some images, some powerful images, some, not only the subject of the work that will make me think about what practice is proposing, but also sort of challenge my eyes and my view to something totally different and powerful, and something that I have never seen before. And so visually, for me, it's also very important, and I think this is also very important and very powerful, so we can sort of also move forward as a society, as a community, that we can face things that we haven't faced before as an experience. When we go to the theater, and this is also a very important discussion right now, as you mentioned, with the pandemic and huge crisis we're facing right now, that is not allowing you coming to the festival, learning from the future. At the same time, I needed to change the whole program of the festival. So we're now talking here, and we'll have many other things that we are planning and programming for the audience. There's also a beauty in the way that artists are reinventing themselves and trying to establish new dialogues with the audience, with your audience. So for me, there's something very powerful about going to a dark room and see some performance and be part of this experience. I will be there in the same room with one or many performers and the whole set and everything. And for me, it's like this very powerful experience that I, as an audience, allowed myself to live, to be in, to let the artist show me what they have to tell me. And this is something that I find very, very important and powerful, that everybody would have access to that, And but also, it's very interesting, very important also to see that artists are also developing virtual works that are establishing new ways of being in touch with the audience, and this is also becoming very important.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, as I said, it's when you were talking about this experience in a dark room with lots of people. I mean, we're not able to have that right now. Exactly. But I would say, for me, that's also one of the immersive aspects of theatre, or any kind of visual arts that's immersive, has a big impact on me, because it's about this experience, whether it's sound-based or visually based. And I think definitely art is, people's experience with art might have been previously what they experienced with religion or something. So I think there's definitely, that's definitely linked in the kind of the need for the human to believe or to experience this kind of other realm, or this beyond themselves. Yeah, it's interesting because I made recently, I was supposed to do a number of workshops, and they were not able to happen live. So I developed a 3-hour sound journey, which is a choreographic kind of, or movement workshop experience, as a response to that. But I also decided to make a sound work as opposed to a visual work, because I felt like I wanted to get away from this fatigue of the screen and this like watching the screen, so people just listen to this thing in the dark and just move. So your own personal theatre. And I've seen a number of Zoom performance works, but it's true what you say, like some of the forms that are being developed are interesting and will carry on in a beyond the pandemic. But I think there's also certainly maybe some forms that are less than. So there's some more than and there's some less than, but that's interesting. We're definitely having to kind of adapt. But I did realize, talking to the dancer performer that I work with, that yeah, we miss the live, we miss the theatre, for sure.
Absolutely.
So, you know, we can adapt, but do we really want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, it depends on the artist also. Some people are adapting and they're doing a very good job there. It is new ways, and some of these new ways, some artists, it works. And I find I have some works that I've seen, that I've experienced also, that are very good and very nice. I mean, I'm intrigued, I'm curious. It makes me think, it puts myself in my own house in sort of experience. Of course, the audience needs to be open to do that in their own houses, not living and being in a dark room, but making your house sort of a place to experience and to go in that journey that the artist is proposing. So yes, you were saying about, when we ended our last conversation, you were saying that these creations we are going through for this new world, the virtual world, and if we want to come back to the real world, where we can, if you want to actually invest on this virtual creations, I think it was sort of in that direction. And I was saying that I think we're all, most of the people that I've been talking to, directors and directors of festivals and directors of companies and artists generally, it's we are all willing and expecting the world to be in a point where we could meet again and open the theater galleries and cultural spaces where we could actually fill these spaces with people, with audience, and have as many people as we want and can on stage, on the performance spaces. And I think we're all willing to go back there. However, it's been also very special to see that for some artists and some groups, it's been amazing. The creations they have created, thinking already the relationship between them, the artist, and the audience virtually. So it's really incredible what some artists, for their work, for their research, for the way they see their art and their productions, in a way that it is possible, and it is interesting also, and it is also a nice experience to be in front of your computer or on your phone, and you can also have, they can manage to take you into an experience that is also interesting. That's why we were saying also that we might keep it for the future, hoping also that we'll be able to go back to the theater rooms and galleries. But this is probably something that is going to be added to what we're going to show in cultural events or spaces like this. which I think is very interesting also. But of course, there are some artists that don't see their work going into that direction. I was talking to, there are two artists that I like very much. They're from Holland, and they have also a work that we're going to have I'm going to have a conversation with them also, because I also want to invite them to come to the festival. They have a project that's called Future Fossils, and it's amazing. It started in the town of Rotterdam, and now they're working independently. And I was talking to them, and they said, we're happy to participate in a conversation with you about the work that we're developing. However, we don't actually see our work only online, only on the internet, or because it really is the presence, and our work is actually the mixture of artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, plus the human body live in front of the audience, with the audience coming through this body that is moving somehow, you know? And then it's part of their work, it's part of their research. And I think this is actually very beautiful and very important also, that we keep what we believe in. Of course, it is a very hard moment if you cannot do your work live, because we cannot right now with the pandemic. But I think there is these two things going on at the same time that I'm curious to talk about it and look into that.
I think it was interesting because when you were talking there, I remembered I was researching my last work called Temporary Store, and it's a kind of this, let's say, an extension. Well, it's not exactly an extension of Learning from the Future, but it's like another development of the idea of a kind of a choreography that appeared like an algorithm or a kind of a fictional artificial intelligence. And at that time, I was researching around the concept of the virtual, which you can find in different philosophers' works, from Deleuze to Zizek and so on. And so the notion of the virtual is a concept that kind of pre-exists even what we're living through now with COVID-19. And I was at that time thinking about how could you make a virtual entity somehow visible how can you bring something from the invisible to the visible, or what is this virtual in the real space? So I think this question of the virtual and how you virtually connect is interesting from this perceptual perspective. Like, even when our conversation right now got interrupted and there was two of me and one of you, and I was looking at myself talking I could hear myself what I'd said 2 seconds before, but I could hear myself talking now. So it was quite an interesting moment of like time, kind of hearing myself say something that I said 2 seconds ago. So there was, for me, something strange in that. But I think, so just to come back to what you said, I think some things are lost and some things are gained potentially within this like artistic work and research that we're making under the conditions of lockdown, or we have been making under the conditions of lockdown. And but I think, yeah, there are definitely, as you say, things that will be carried forward, and maybe this idea of the virtual or this increasing digital space and how that can be expanded and how it can help develop notions of community out with kind of real time and space. There's definitely something there. Yeah, I guess that when I just had this conversation with you, it was the first time I thought about a Zoom conversation as some kind of chat, as some kind of way of thinking about images or video. So yeah, so it's definitely not all bad. I think it's more this physical situation of being in one room and this feeling of containment, especially when it comes to moving in the body, that feels somehow disconnected, or we don't. Also, I think there's a fear, like we also want to get back into those spaces, because that's also that's our work, you know. So we also kind of still need to make that relevant and fight for it. Because, you know, planes are flying that are pretty full, but theatres are still empty.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And this is absolutely true. I mean, planes are flying, and in terms of planes, and it's also a subject from this pandemic era that we're now facing, that is sustainability, that we've been talking a lot, especially when director of festivals and theater rooms that are used to invite many companies from outside their villages and countries to present there, and the effect that it has, the impact that it has in the environment, in the ecosystem generally. Also, when you have so many people coming and flying to your village, to your town, so your local audience can see the work that is being developed by artists all over the world, in different parts of the country, which is amazing. Actually, that's one of the moments and the things that I enjoy the most, is actually being able to be in my city and see the audience of the festival being able to see the works that are there. And one of the interesting things that are changing a lot in this edition of the festival is that that's what we usually did, invite many artists from different places to come to Porto Alegre and show their work to the local artists. Now we are going to invest most of the program. Basically, I think I'm not very good with percentage, but I think 90% of the program this year is going to be with local artists. Also because the situation in Brazil for artists is very, very hard, because, as you said, planes are flying, but theaters and galleries are all closed. So we're going to be able, through the internet, through this virtual world, we're going to be able to invite not only, but most local artists, and show their work to the audience all over the place, because it's going to be online. So it's a completely different festival in this way. And this is also something that came to my mind when I was creating this new festival. And I think this is also one of the things that it's tiring to. In March, I had the program of the festival done for this year. So it was really tiring to all new, not only a new program, but a new way of doing the festival, a new way of communicating with people, even with my team. The people that work with me, we are used to be next to each other and create together and plan things together. Now it's like we always have to set a Zoom meeting so we can. It's harder. It's different, at least, you know. And one of the things I was listening, I guess, some interview about I don't remember who was saying that. I'm sorry, but it was that even these virtual meetings are more tiring than the normal meetings because of the delay that you were mentioning. Because when I'm speaking right now, you are listening to me, to what I'm saying, like 1 or 2 seconds later, and this happens. So this is sort of also confusing for the brain. And but yes, I mean, there's a lot of changes. And I think this changes. What I wanted also to continue talking to you about is that these changes, they have everything to do with this technology, and that is also part of your research. So I don't know if you think this moment, this pandemic moment, and virtual relationship that we are having will influence your future works and the way you're seeing your work as you're already investigate this body, machine, and artificial intelligence and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely, or I feel like as you said, like I had a concept for a performance in March, and a concept for a festival, which have both, or let's say I had a whole year of work that just was kind of cancelled. And so there has been this process of reinventing. So I feel like I've been reinventing my research kind of continuously since the lockdown. And I think I mentioned to you that I developed these sound journeys, which were a kind of a work that can be performed at home by an individual, and it kind of represents in a way, or it's very close to learning from the future. It's a lot of the ideas around body A, they appear in this sound journey as sort of spoken sci-fi text. But yeah, at the moment I feel like, I mean, my work is, I'm essentially a choreographer, and my next phase of research with the artist dancer, Leah Marjevich, is about looking at movement and also this question of embodiment. So to a certain extent, yes, we're influenced, but if your work is dance, then it does require a live body and a live space. I mean, of course, there are such things as Zoom rehearsals and so on, but you know, one of the things about my work is I see things, or it's not even I see them, like I get ideas by watching things in front of me. So seeing this interaction, this chemistry that's happening in the room. So, I mean, unless I was, and actually we kind of decided not to do Zoom rehearsals. We decided to do them live, and we will meet in September for the first time to do a rehearsal together. But definitely, I mean, for me, this question of experience actually is something that comes stronger, reflecting on this period of time, because what is the experience that you have with this virtual platform? What is your experience of art in this time? You know, that's why I was talking also about the immersive experience of sound, or screen-based works, or film, or these mediums that kind of work for, there are certain mediums that are already working well in a kind of home setting. And I'm very close to the everyday, and I'm inspired by the everyday. So, and I spoke to a woman in Scotland who will hopefully collaborate with me on my own festival about a lot of emerging young artists who were making work using their kind of living rooms as the backdrop, as the scenographies for their works. And I mean, in a way, I was taking tables and chairs from everyday life in my first pieces and putting them in galleries. So it's sort of, you know, leaving the everyday where it is and performing within the everyday is also something that we can do. But on a more like, on the level of meaning, for me, it brings me back to also this idea of place, or of also distribution, or the environmental impact my work has, the economy of my work, who gets to see this work, and how can we also distribute opportunities better. I mean, I'm not somebody who is, you know, funded all the time, or it's always on projects, but even still, it's like we have to somehow find a way to pull together as a group of artists who are all experiencing similar difficulties at this time. So and to a certain extent, I think it won't shift the fact that I'm a person who loves movement and dance, and that needs to be a physical experience. However, perhaps how it happens, the places where it happens, and the conditions under which it happens could shift. just to say, just to come back to this international aspect, when I was, before I went to study dance and when I was young, I was living for seeing international dance works in my city in Glasgow through the dance festival that was running at that time. So yeah, I feel like it would also be a pity to lose this other aspect of the outside of the other, because it also enriches what is actually, what you have from your own kind of education or background or artistic experience. It's enriching to have this other international dimension. But yeah, I think it's just taking a plane and going somewhere for 5 days every other week of the year is clearly not sustainable. So when we come to Brazil next year, we'll stay for a year.
Absolutely, you should do that. Or at least a big tour.
I haven't quite figured out how I'll make that work. But it would be more to invest. I mean, that's not even a question for you, but it's more like then, okay, maybe then it has to be more. There has to be more around. There has to be a longer term strategy in place. Or I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it would definitely be a pity to lose this international exchange.
Yes, I mean, this is actually something that we are also discussing a lot. Well, we try to do that a lot, that when we invite an artist from abroad, that they would spend as much time as possible in the city. But now I guess we're now looking into that and discussing about that all really, because of course it was more in terms of work. So since someone flew all the way from Europe to Brazil, then should go to different cities in South America or in Brazil, so to show their work and etc. But it would be more like that, and go into cities around closer to the places and stay a little longer, develop some work, stay for a residency for a little bit longer, not just come and show the work and go back, maybe come show the work and also work with local artists. There's a lot of things that we are also thinking and planning that might be more sustainable, more valuable, the coming of this one artist to come to Porto Alegre, for example, and stay longer and develop a longer work, and something like that. It's something very...
As I said, I also think about it for myself, like it's more this, I mean, clearly now we have some live shows rescheduled in Europe, but they're probably places we could even take trains to or drive to, so that's a totally different aspect. But I mean, the other day when you were talking about Brazil, I thought, wow, it's also an interesting country. Like it would be an opportunity to dive in a bit more, because it's like also just now contemplating getting on a plane and going 10 hours for 3 days feels quite we can do it, but maybe we can also think in another way.
Exactly, something like that. And I guess to come to an ending, I would like to, we mentioned before Donna Haraway, and I would like to know if you also have, besides this future body and this mixture of body and machine, in your work, do you also associate it with the feminism and the discussions of the future of feminism and the work and the relationship between this post-gender thing into your work?
Yeah, it was interesting because I was making in my second work temporary store, there is a virtual biotech corporation called Vessels Inc., who have fabricated 2 prototype bodies, one male, one female. But we are talking about them in the text, or we refer to them in the text as like genderless or post-gender or post-sex bodies. Like there is a man and a woman version, but it's not about kind of men and women. It's just about a man and a woman as a kind of prototype species or something.
Yeah.
But but to come back to what you said in reference to feminism, when we showed Learning from the Future in Edinburgh, somebody commented, you can really see it's really interesting that this is a work made by a woman and performed by a woman. And I guess for me, the question of androgyny has come up quite a lot in my work. Like, I have been always interested in somehow, not so much gender neutrality or there being no gender, but somehow this androgyny. So it's not important about, it's not about men and women per se, or that's been certainly some of our work, such as I Not I or The Making of Doubt, were very much about this kind of androgyny more than really feminist. But actually with Learning from the Future, and in conversation with some of the workshop participants who made these sound journeys with me, they said, yeah, somehow it feels that this future is feminine, you know. And I think that the fact that Body A is this quite powerful female figure, and the woman dancing it is also quite, you know, her body is very strong, she's very impressive. This has also created images around the work connected to kind of like she's some sort of person fighting for good, or she's this kind of warrior, or it's definitely connecting us to a kind of feminine power, but not in this, like, I don't know, sexy way, but more in this kind of, the body of a woman can be so powerful and is so powerful on this kind of physical basis. And also, so I think that I'm not directly quoting kind of feminist sources in my work, but I do feel as a woman working in the arts that, I made a piece 2 years ago, which was a remake of it was a version of a ballet made by Bronislava Nijinská, who was a woman operating in dance in the 1920s. She was the sister of Nijinsky. But of course, being a woman in the world of ballet in the 1920s was very difficult. So, you know, she was really someone who never really got the recognition that she deserved, although she was recognized. So for me, there's definitely a feeling of not so much in the, it definitely, like I feel like I'm not specifically talking about like feminist theories in this work, but it definitely connects this idea of maybe kind of women as a kind of positive force moving forward, because, you know, it's about this power or this redistribution of power that would allow a kind of another narrative or another voice that would be somehow feminine, that would be this, the strong feminine voice, if that makes sense.
Yes, I guess.
So it's not directly about feminism per se, but I do feel like it's I think it's just like the politics of a woman working in dance as a mother and all these kind of things. I think I probably put into my work at some level.
That is very good. And the work, and it really is, because I mean, it's something that came also to my mind when I first saw the show, and you know, and the people that have been to Edinburgh Festival Showcase, it's like this crazy, countless productions going on every day from morning to evening. And it was one of the shows that I selected that I wanted to see, and after have seen many other shows, so actually your head is like really working, seeing lots of stuff, and going from theater to theater, which is amazing. Actually, it's a very nice experience also to be there and to do that. but I was also trying to connect to the piece and not think that I need to run and go to another to see another work. And when I saw Learning from the Future, I was, after the show, thinking about it, that you see this cyborg, sort of androgynous body in front of you, moving, dancing in this beautiful space. And it came to my mind that it was very special that this sort of androgynous body was played by a woman. It is a human, it is a woman's body there. And how powerful it is, actually, it brings, being done by a woman, it brings a lot of different reflections and impacts that it would be if it would have been a man, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it also connects to, like, I mean, for me, there's also a lot of I mean, although Leah is playing a cyborg in this work, you feel that it's very emotional somehow. And I don't exactly know why that is. I mean, it's a lot to do with her and her connection to the work, but it's emotional in a way that's not, you know, tears and laughter, but there's definitely something about her isolation there that feels powerful and feels emotional. And I think it would be definitely different if it was a man. Yeah, because also, you know, women's, the idea that, you know, the uterus goes into the future, you know, it's like we need women to kind of keep on bringing the next generations forward. So that's definitely something in the imagery of a woman's body that you wouldn't have with a male figure.
Good. So, sorry, no, continue.
No, so that's also where that comes from. And there is, I think, yeah, there is kind of definitely, I'm a woman and I've made choreographies on myself. And yeah, so there's always this, I think the Learning from the Future, it was a bit starting on my body and migrating onto Leah's body. So it started it was always about a woman's body somehow.
Good. Colette, I think this is it. I'm very happy.
Oh dear. It was very nice. It was a pleasure.
Yes, it's a pleasure to me. Thank you very much. Well, it is really like an experiment for all of us. I would love to have you here in Porto Alegre, sitting with us, with the audience, and that we could discuss about all of this and have people asking you, the audience asking you stuff also. But as soon as we upload this video to our website, to our channel, TV channel, I'll let you know the comments and of course, so I would love if you could be also part of it. Thank you very much. I really, really hope to see you next year live, maybe live and virtual. Let's see what happens.
Boat, we can start now. We take a ship.
Good. And
let's see where we are next year.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very, very much.